when people would not be judged by the colour of their skin but by the content of their character. How is today's identity politics consistent with that vision?
Jordan Peterson.
Consistent with that vision at all. I mean, the problem I have with identity politics as a mode of philosophical apprehension is that it's predicated on the idea that the appropriate way to classify people is by their group identity, in whatever fragmentary formulation that might take, in the multiplicity of ways that people can be divided into groups. And the classical postmodern, and I would also say Marxist way of viewing the world, even though those two things shouldn't be allowed together, they tend to be, is that group identity takes priority over individual identity, and I think that's precisely the opposite of what Martin Luther King was hoping for and working for. And I think it's unbelievably dangerous, partly because when you assume that people should primarily be identified by their group, then you can also attribute group guilt to them by their group. And then things go downhill very, very rapidly. And we've had no shortage of evidence of that sort of thing happening, say, throughout the 20th century.
Are there particular groups that you are more concerned about than others? For example, the Liberal Party, as Terri Butler said earlier, is a group. Are there groups that you think are more dangerous?
There isn't a problem with groups. The problem is with assuming that the fundamental way that you should categorize people is with their group identity. Obviously, we all belong to groups. The issue is whether or not the individual identity is primary and the group identity is secondary, or the group identity is primary and the individual identity is secondary. If you're a proponent, for example, of equality of outcome, of quotas, then you de facto accept the proposition that it's the group identity that is primary, and there's all sorts of dangers that are associated with that far outweigh whatever good you're likely to do.
Okay,
well, maybe you just...
Go ahead.
Maybe you just think that representative democracy should be representative. Maybe you just think that women should be equally represented in the decision-making fora of our nation. Maybe that's really just about having proper equality in a body that's meant to be representative.
Well, I do believe that women should have... I don't understand your question, I guess.
I guess you don't. That's pretty obvious, unfortunately.
Well, how about if you phrase it more clearly, instead of just insulting me? Look at it this way. Let's talk about quotas for a minute. So there's a very wide array of jobs that are fundamentally done by men. So, for example,
Member of Parliament,
99.9% of
sorry, Alex, I'm going to
bricklayers.
stop sledging you now, I promise.
I'm happy to give my minute to Jordan.
99.9% of bricklayers are men. Should we have quotas for women?
Is bricklaying representative democracy?
That has nothing to do with the question. The question is if there's evidence of structural inequality and oppression because women aren't precisely represented at 50% in all professions at all levels, then why don't we have a conversation about having women represented in all professions at all levels? Why do we talk about the C-suite, for example? Why do we talk about politics and positions of power? Why don't we talk about it across the board?
Okay, so let's just pause and...
yeah, but that's because it's power.
You pose a question to Terri Butler. Go ahead and answer it, then we'll hear from the other panellists.
His question to me.
Well, yeah, if you'd like to answer the question about bricklayers.
There's nothing wrong with bricklayers.
Why there are no quotas in